So we've just learned there's a new release of Flying Scotsman for Train Simulator Classic commemorating 100 years of the Flying Scotsman. So I thought I might read for you a bit of the history of Flying Scotsman from the Rail Museum in the UK, and this is from their website. Flying Scotsman started life as just another of Sir Nigel Gresley's A1 class of locomotives, but is now considered the most famous locomotive in the world. It was built in 1923 at Doncaster Works, costing £8,000. It was 97 tonnes, 70 feet long, and officially the first locomotive to reach 100 mile an hour, and they claim the first to circumnavigate the globe. Not quite, but you know, it's a good story, why get in the way? It holds the world record for a non-stop run in a steam locomotive set in 1989 with a 442-mile trip. Flying Scotsman was built in Doncaster, the first locomotive of the newly formed London and North Eastern Railway, LNER. It left the works on the 24th of February 1923 with the number 1472. It was designed by Sir Nigel Gresley as part of the A1 class, the most powerful locomotives used by the LNER at that time. By 1924, when it was selected to appear at the British Empire exhibition in London, the loco had been renumbered 4472 and given the name Flying Scotsman after the 10 a.m. London to Edinburgh rail service, which started in 1862. And there it is at the exhibition, very, very shiny. The British Empire exhibition made the Flying Scotsman famous, and it went on to feature in many more publicity events for LNER. In 1928, it was given a new type of tender with a corridor, which meant that the new crew could take over without stopping the train. This allowed it to hold the first ever non-stop London to Edinburgh service on the 1st of May that year, reducing the journey time to 8 hours. In 1934, Scotsman was clocked at 100 mile an hour on a special test run, officially the first locomotive in the UK to reach that speed. The test run proved to the LNER's directors that steam power could provide high speeds, negating a plan for the company to use diesel's power on its high-speed services. Well, we all know what happened there. During the Second World War, LNER passenger locomotives had always been painted apple green, but during the war, Flying Scotsman was repainted in wartime black, in common with all railway stock. After the war, it became green again and was rebuilt as an A3 Pacific. In 1948, British Railways was formed and rail travel in Britain was nationalised. Scotsman, now numbered 60103, was painted blue for a time and then BR green. It remained that colour until 1963, when it was retired by British Rail. By this time it had undergone several alterations to improve its performance, but it had been pulling trains for 40 years and steam engines were becoming old-fashioned. In January 1963, Alan Pegler bought Flying Scotsman. As part of the deal, Pegler negotiated a complete overhaul of the locomotive. It was converted back to single chimney condition and repainted in LNER livery. The tender was exchanged for a corridor type, and an agreement was made that enabled it to run on the main line. In a blaze of publicity, Flying Scotsman ran its last train for British Railways on 14th of January 1963. In May 1968, on the 40th anniversary of the first non-stop run, Flying Scotsman travelled non-stop from London King's Cross to Edinburgh. In 1969, Flying Scotsman headed to the United States on a tour intended to promote British exports. The tour broke even in its first year, but the second lost money. In a bid to balance the books, Pegler arranged for the train to travel to San Francisco. The trip worked well operationally, but it was a financial disaster. Alan Pegler was forced into bankruptcy, and Scotsman was stranded in the USA. And there's some photos of Scotsman at King's Cross Station, and before it leaves on the last scheduled trip from King's Cross, and in Denison, Texas in 1970. However, in 1973, Flying Scotsman was brought back to the UK after William McAlpine heard about the situation in the USA. He promptly put together a rescue plan, paying off the creditors and buying a locomotive. McAlpine had the engine restored at Derby Works and kept it running for 23 years in his ownership, extensively overhauling it twice. He even took Flying Scotsman to Australia, making it the first steam locomotive to circumnavigate the globe on its voyage there and back. While in Australia in 1989, it also set a new record for the longest non-stop run by a steam locomotive at 422 miles. Following the successful tour of Australia, it's interesting they call it successful because I'm pretty sure it went badly here too, and it was in danger of being scrapped here as well. Anyway, Flying Scotsman ran special trains around Britain, including regular runs over the famous Settled at Carlisle Railway and trips hauling the prestigious Orient Express Pullman train. The locomotive was repaired again in the early 1990s, at which time pop impresario Pete Waterman formed a short-lived partnership with Sir William to run the locomotive. In February 1996, businessman Tony Marchington bought the Scotsman outright for £1.25 million. In 2004, Flying Scotsman hit the headlines again with yet another crisis over its ownership. A campaign spearheaded by the National Railway Museum to save the locomotive for the nation amassed the support of thousands, confirming its status as a national treasure. The appeal to keep the steam icon in Britain was supported by a $1.8 million grant from the National Heritage Memorial Fund and the generosity of the public. Its restoration was also completed with the help of the Heritage Lottery Fund grant of $275,000. Scotsman and the National Railway Museum. From 2006, Flying Scotsman underwent an extensive restoration in the workshop of Riley & Son Limited. In 2016, the painstaking £4.2 million project to bring a legend back to life, resplendent in BR green livery in its guise as 60103, was completed. As the restoration process came to an end, all eyes were once again trained on the world's most famous locomotive. The next chapter of Flying Scotsman's story was its triumphant return as a working museum exhibit, conquering yet another record as the oldest mainline working locomotive on Britain's tracks. There's a picture of it with a big crowd around the turntable. Undoubtedly one of the jewels in the crown of the world-class collection, it can now be experienced by a new generation of Scotsman fans and will captivate the public for generations to come. And indeed is at King's Cross Station this weekend, and part of that is its 100th year, and Dovetail will be there too, promoting the new Pack in Train Simulator Classic. See you later. If you like this, give it a thumbs up, and if you want to, subscribe, and if you've got a bit of a FOMO, click the tinkly thing so you don't miss out on new content. Thanks a lot. Bye now.